Acts 25. How long have we been in Acts? Acts total. Do you have a record of that? 2 years? We are getting closer to the end. Anybody have that date? Anybody? Are you looking it up, brother?
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought maybe you were busy looking.
No.
I don't mark these dates down.
Here. We're getting on, it's over 2 years.
Yeah. Over 2 years.
Let me get you an exact, let's see, we were in Acts 5, Christmas time 2016.
Acts 5.
Yeah. Acts 2, let's see. My book, this one goes, okay, we were in Acts chapter 1, verses 14 through 26, 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago, this first Sunday. So it's been a little over 3 years. I can give you an exact date by going in the other book.
Well, 25, 26, 27. I got my, counting my fingers. 4 more chapters. 1, 7, 3. No, it would be another 6 months. No. Well, I don't know.
Let's see here.
It takes us 5 years to do the survey of the whole Bible. It takes us an even 5 years.
Yeah, we started Acts 1, May 22nd, 2016.
Okay, 2016. Maybe 3 years and 2 months.
5 years long.
Okay, we don't have the notes yet. I finished though the chapter. It contains 27 verses. We went over this outline. The appointment that Festus is the newly appointed governor here. He arrives. The animosity that the Jews still have. I mean, people carry hatred around, man. They just carry it around. Then the action of this Festus is he's a man of action. There are people that are not men of action. And we were in here yesterday, and the wife was back there by the junk. There's a junk pile back there. And I don't know how much of a junk pile it is. We took the trash out. There was one little flat of some plants. Usually if it ends up on the junk pile, it's what? Of plants. Are they real hardy, or they look pretty good though. She said, I gotta have them. Now what should you do with them right away once you get home? Plant them right away. Do something with them right away. What do most people do?
They sit on the porch
until they're really dead. Now I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people would do that. Yeah, you gotta be a man of action. Man of action. I mean, there is a time when you should pull the trigger. Man of action. All right, the animosity, the ability. He says, those that are able to come up with me to hear Paul, come on up. The ability, we talked about that. There are people that are able to go, people who are unable to go. I mean, they had other plans and so on. The accusations that were made against Paul and Paul's answer. That took us up to verse 8. Now we're just going over the outline for now. And remember, there are no paragraph markings from here on out in the Bible, so we make these as we go. The appeasement. He does this appeasement, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, verse 9, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? Now there would be reasons why he would not go up there. One would be is if they hate him still so much, they're still laying in wait, ready to kill him when they have an opportunity to do it. And that's where we left it off last week. Father, now bless the lesson today and preaching this morning and evening. Now, Father, for your presence to be felt here, those that need to be here, those that have promised that they would be here, today, Father, and that the preaching would apply to them and be a blessing to them this morning. In Christ's name, I pray. Amen. Verse 9 again. After he hears that, he wants to, what's taking place in Paul's heart, I mean, as soon as he hears this, he wants to avoid going. Now, the easiest way to avoid going is to make another appeal. So he makes this appeal in verses. So there's the avoidance, then the appeal is given in verses 10 through 12. He appeals, as it says in verse 11. Now, we're not going over this in detail. We're just skimming through this to get through the outline. Makes this appeal, I appeal unto Caesar. What do you normally do before you go to a higher court? It should be found guilty in a lower court. Now, he is yet to be found guilty. So he's already going to the appellate court. He's going to the higher. He's now appealing to another court, a higher court. But he wants to avoid going back to Jerusalem. Another motive would have been this. He's wasted enough time getting to Rome. Let's just have at it and get to Rome. Let's have at it. So the appeal is made. Verse 12, the authority that is invested in that. Then Festus, verse 12, conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar shalt thou go. So the authority to send him there, he's been granted permission to get there. Now, in verses 13 through 21, my next one I have here is the amusement. It's certain days, and after certain days, so a period of time takes place. They just don't ship him off. Because they have nothing to accuse him of. They don't have any of these crimes to send him there. Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. When they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, There's a certain man left in bonds by Felix. Now he brings this up because he wants to come up with some crimes to lay against him so that he can place him on, so he can send him away. But in going to this, as an example, this what's the mansion? What's that thing called in the Appalachian Mountains? It's in Asheville. Vanderbilt. Biltmore. Biltmore's there. Vanderbilt is the grandson's money. He built that. It's a museum. The two of the grandsons had owned it. I think, or his sons or some other grandsons now own it. And one has turned that into a museum, and I forget how big the grounds are. And then the other grandson took the grounds. One took the land, the other took the house. But in our tours, if you were invited there, and you're a friend or family member in Vanderbilt, this would have been, I think, the grandson who built it. How long were you expected? Anybody remember on a tour how long you had been expected to stay there? They invite you out there. I mean, these aristocrats have nothing to do. They have nothing to do. Anybody remember? I probably brought this up one. I think they were expected to stay a minimum of 6 months. Yeah. I think that's what they said on one of the tours, or it's the walkthrough tour. You're expected to stay in that wing of the house isn't open where all the guests would be. They've opened it up now, but it's not real splendid, I mean, it's not extravagant. But you're expected to stay there 6 months. These people have nothing to do. Is there television? Do they have radio? So what did they do? What did they do for 6 months?
Okay, and tennis.
Backgammon, pardon? Chess,
Horseback riding.
horseback riding. They have parties every night. Every night's going to have to be, the servants are setting the table, they're having
Pillow
order.
fights?
No, not.
Okay.
You know what, I think you'd have to really try to do that, but that could be part of it, the traveling evangelist, yes.
Okay.
I think they played a lot of croquet.
Yeah.
Croquet, there's no polo field there.
Any tennis courts?
There could be a tennis court. I don't remember seeing that, but I think they played a lot of croquet. I mean, they're bored out of their mind.
No beach ball?
No, they have garden weeders. Huh?
No beach ball?
What ball?
Beach ball, that's Spanish for baseball.
Oh, no baseball. So they're bored. Now, what would be the difference then back here? In these days, I mean, you're the king. You've got your wife with you. Who's he have with him? Bernice. Now, and I've read this too about who these people are, who Bernice is, and whatever the other girl's name is. These girls are sisters, and so on, that they're related. And half these people had these same wives over and over again, and it wasn't a good situation. So the idea is, hey, listen, they have nothing to do, so hey, I've got this guy. They got to invent something to do. I've got this guy who's in prison. Why don't you hear him? To break up the day. So I marked off verses 13 through 21 as amusement. They're trying to amuse themselves. They're going to bring Paul in, and hey, you got to see this character, and he's going to do his thing, evangelist. So they're going to get some amusement. They're going to get some amusement out of this.
You mean I can tell jokes?
No. Verse 23. And that is then, and on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice with great pomp. So, they've dialed themselves up. They're coming in, all formal and all. This is the audience. And we got to stick with all these A words on this outline. The audience that is coming to hear Paul give his defense, so then that Festus can lay these charges, find someone to help him lay charges against him so he doesn't look foolish in front of Caesar. The audience. And then verses 22 through 27. I mark this down, and sometimes I make these outlines, I make them, and then I review these things a week later and all. I can't remember. I am getting older. Can't remember why did I put that down there. My last one was the assurance. Now, who would have gotten assurance? And he's going off to Caesar. They're laying charges against him. Who would really have assurance that this is really the right thing? Paul would.
He was told by the Lord he had to go before the people.
I think that's where I went. I went back to Acts 9 and gave what he was called to do.
Yeah.
And so the assurance here isn't assuring that we've got some crimes laid against them. The assurance is Paul is now, I'm headed for Rome. And this is where I'm supposed to end up. I'm supposed to witness, and it's more vague in Acts 9, but he's going to witness before kings. He already did right here. He's going to witness before Agrippa, and now he's going to go to Rome and most likely witness there. So he is getting assurance through all this. All right, that ends the outline. Now to go over the outline. Our first one was the appointment. Let's go back here to Acts 24, verse 27. 24, verse 27. But after 2 years, Porcius Festus came into Felix's room, and Felix, willing to show the Jews the pleasure, left Paul bound. Now, 2 years sounds like a long time, he shows the juice of pleasure, leads Paul bound. That sounds like a long time. Sometimes that time can really grind on. I just finished, the wife and I were trying to figure out when I decided, let's fix up the house, get it ready for retirement. And because eventually I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit working. I mean, I'm not getting younger. And so one of the very first things I did was we closed off the fireplace. And everybody was gone out of the house. I decided, it's like take the bull by the horns, buddy. I ripped off all the tiles off the sandstone. I sanded it. I kind of dressed up a little bit and covered a few things, but it permeated the whole house. Wifey was not happy. She had to clean the whole house. I mean, we're talking all 3 floors. Because it went up like a chimney up the staircase and all. I started cleaning it off. Not the soot, but this is mortar and all. Cleaned it off. Went and got some heavy-duty stuff to do it. Well, anyway, I finished the threshold. And Noah and I went out there to get some field stone, and we arranged it in there. And I couldn't get my bricklayer out there. And he was going to charge me, I think, $450. I saved $450. I concreted it myself. I've never done anything like that. And so the only way to do it is dive into it. If worst comes to worst, what could I do? Start over, bust it out of there and just start over again. Right? But it turned out pretty good. So I guess the reason I brought that up, I started doing that, I think 5 years ago. The wife said, no, it hasn't been 5 years, but man, time flies. 2 years are up. The appointment. Festus replaces Felix. Now, all they can do is come up with dates that are close, depending on who is giving the information. 58 AD to 61 AD, around in there. He's appointed by Nero. They probably get this out of historian books, and the main historian back then was Josephus. It's something other than the Bible. You're not going to find this information in the Bible. So history shows that under the rule of Felix, there was civil unrest with the Jews, and Felix also committed evil acts. There was civil unrest. Now listen, headquarters, that is, Nero doesn't want to hear about that. So what he does is he reappoints somebody else. History shows Felix returning to Rome, where he eventually, as what I've read, he eventually commits suicide. It's just typical of governments, totalitarian governments. I guess in our recent history, we didn't live through it. We were the aftermath of it and only heard historical facts about it. But today, man, a lot of it doesn't seem so accurate. Or what they say, well, he's a fascist or he's a fascist. Those that claim, well, you're a fascist and they're a fascist, I think what they need to do is go live under a fascist for a while and find out what a fascist is. Anybody want to live under Nazi Germany?
No.
Who are the lucky ones? Oh, they say, well, the dead ones were the lucky ones. The ones that got out just before it all happened, man, get out of there. A lot of actors got out. I don't know how you got out of there. I think some of them were shipped out. There were ports that wouldn't take these Jews. They shipped them back. Oh, how awful. They were getting out, and then they couldn't get out. But those that want to banty around, well, this guy, they say Trump is a fascist, or he's a fascist. I think those that say that need to go live under one and find out what a fascist really is. And what that, if you crossed Hitler and you were, what would you say, toast? Toast. And to save yourself from being toasted, they did what? What did I just say this guy did?
They got out of Dodge.
They got out of Dodge one way or another by taking the cyanide pill.
Yeah.
That's sewn into the hem of their garment, and they slip it up in there, and I think they die in 6 seconds. Something like that. Because there were those at the trials, I think, that did that. They'd get their pill, and then boom, they do themselves in. They just, let's end this. All right? So these totalitarian governments, they want these, what do they call that? A stampede to stupidity. That's what the Democrats are doing, a stampede to stupidity. Is they're trying to outdo each other on who's the dumbest. Man, but if we lived under that kind of rule, it's going to be like, not Managua, Nicaragua. It's going to be like Venezuela. Everybody in poverty, not everybody's in poverty, though. Who's not in poverty? The thugs running it. The thugs that run it. All right, so that is our first point, the appointment. He is appointed. So Nero doesn't want to hear all the civil unrest. He wants to have it to be calm, so he appoints this new government. The arrival. He arrives in verse 1, chapter 25. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Now again, I don't know if it's in my notes, but the ascension, when you're ascending, is they say that Jerusalem is a higher plane. That's why these things, it doesn't matter any direction you leave Jerusalem, you're up on a higher elevation. That's why the Bible says you go down. So anytime you're going into Jerusalem, doesn't matter where you're coming from, you're going up. It just means altitude. I've read that's why it reads that way. In verse 1, he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. In verse 6, he went down into Caesarea, in verse 6. And then our third point was, he is a man of action. There are people who are men of action and people who are just basically spectators. And my grandsons were they're on this, what do you call that? Is it a tablet?
Yeah.
They're on their tablet, and on the tablet they got hooked on, it's what the not Prince Charles, what's the prince over there? He just got married. Pardon?
Prince Harry.
Prince Harry. He called Fortnite. He said Fortnite needs to be banned worldwide. He wants to get it banned from England, from the islands. He wants it out of there, Fortnite. That these kids are getting hooked on it. Kids are hooked on this. Adults are hooked on it. They can't stay off their dumb phones. Man, I was preaching here. One of our friends were here. They get a call. The lady took it. And she's blabbing and giggling and laughing while I'm going on. Took the call. I mean, give it a rest. So anyway, they're on Fortnite, and then my daughter asked me, help me get them off Fortnite. Well, first get the tablet. First get the tablet. So we locked it up. We locked up the tablet. And a man of action. So what is popular on YouTube is these movies. People actually make money on this. Mm-hmm. What do you call those little movies? Is there a name for these movies?
Not that I know of.
I don't know how you spell Fortnite. I'm talking about the video game.
Yeah.
But I looked up Fortnite. I looked it up in the dictionary. How long is it? because the Brits use it. I was going to Fortnite. How long? Is that Irish accent? It's 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So I did a play on words because I don't know how they spell the Fortnite. If it's a British thing, I don't know who developed that. I said, I got off the video. I said, well, why don't you two guys, let's make a video of this. It took a fortnight to get off of Fortnite. Right? How to get off Fortnite in a fortnight, yes.
The computer developer of the Fortnite game was a former neighbor's son, Matthew Hanses, from Harlow, Ohio.
Oh, really?
He's one of the computer developers of that game.
That did that. Yeah, these guys go to college to learn stuff to be able to do this, huh? Now, I'm not saying he did. I mean, boy wonder. Hey, there's a lot of boy wonders out there that never went to college. But anyway, play on words. How I got over Fortnite in a fortnight. Now, I don't know if that's the exact title, but I listed these 10 or 11 things, of what happened. You're hooked, now you're in remission, and just there's like 10 or 11, 12 things. So then my daughter got wind of that, and my one boy did, and I said, now listen, you can either watch these videos. That's what people are doing. Are they gaining anything from it, or are they just wasting their time? They're wasting their time. You can either watch the video, or you can make a video. How many are making a video? So I said, well, why don't you do something about it and make a video? How I got off Fortnite in a fortnight. And now listen, I developed the title, I developed the whole list of, folks, I'm not making the video. I'll go as far as I can go. And I got them off of Fortnite. But it's up to you or someone else to get up and make the video. And then my daughter said, either you are you're either a, how'd she put it? You're either a participant or a, pardon? But it was more of a play on words. You're either a spectator or you're the doer, right? You're either the one initiating it or either you're sitting there. In other words, there's only a few people that are the leader promoting it, and the bulk of everybody is just wasting. They're just feeding off everybody else. The whole thing's just so silly. The whole thing. Basically, all society's like that. There are men that are men of action. Now, listen. I still have the list at the house. They can do something about it. By then, Fortnite will be over. It'll be another passing fad. Fortnite will one day be over. But this is true. All men are different. Some men are men of action, and others are men of inaction. They're men of inaction. It's either we're going to grow trees out of our gutter, or you're going to get the ladder out and get them out of there. Right? Some are men of action, others are of inaction. Festus, it ends up being a man of action. In verse 1, in 3 days he ascended up to Caesarea. I mean, he packed his bags, he got it packed into his quarters. Within 3 days he was gone. In verse 6, it says that when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he was about 10 days there, he went down into Caesarea, and the next day, after he spent some time there at Caesarea, at Jerusalem, he goes back to Caesarea after 10 days. The next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. He didn't waste any time. The next day, Paul was brought in. He didn't put it off and put it off and put it off. Most people are great people for putting it off. All right, he's a man of action. He's going to get things done. He's going to take the bull by the horns. He's not going to waste time. And we have expressions for that. Taking the bull by the horns. What other expressions do we have? Take the bull by the horns. Can you think of something else? Well, whatever. You know what I mean. So in verse 1, it's within 3 days. And in verse 6, it is the next day he does it. Festus' first duty as governor would be to meet the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem. That's why he goes there. 3 days to set up house, take a trip. Festus could be going to Jerusalem to investigate the case of his prisoner Paul. That could be another motive why he went there. All right. Number 4, the animosity in verses 2 and 3. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews, when he arrives at Jerusalem, informed him against Paul. I mean, they didn't waste any time either. They seek him out, or he sought them, informed him against Paul, besought him, and desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. I mean, they have this motive. They still want him dead. They want him dead. The Jews are still at it in their hatred towards Paul. They hate him. Acts 23, go back there, verses 15, 12 through 15. And when it was day, certain of the Jews, this would have been 2 years earlier, bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. I mean, that's a diet to go on. We're not gonna eat or drink till we kill Paul. And now 2 years, and they all starved to death. Exactly right. And they were more than 40, which made this conspiracy. And they came to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under a great curse that we will eat nothing until we have slain Paul. Now therefore ye with the council signify to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though ye would inquire something more perfectly concerning him. And we, or ever he come near, are ready to kill him." Now folks, did they... I know I had a customer come in and he said this after Obama had gotten elected. He said to me he expects to have him assassinated. Not that he would assassinate, but he expected him to be assassinated. Folks, people didn't go after him. And then when I see Trump up there, I'm thinking, whether or not you support him or not, I think, man, we could see an assassination here. People hate these people. Hate them. Hate them. Listen, if Hillary doesn't go to jail, we're all going to still go on. We don't have to hit the streets and riot. But folks, when he got elected, those people hit the streets and rioted. I don't know how people can hate others to such a degree as that, but they do. They hold a great hate in their heart. Acts chapter 9. Acts 9, where Paul first gets saved. Verses 23 and 24. "And after many days were fulfilled, the Jews took counsel to kill him, but their laying await was known of Saul, and they watched the gate day and night to kill him." Now that's 35 AD, and now it's 60 AD. I mean, 25 years later, they still hate the guy.
Yeah,
Well, they didn't take the oath
we're
back.
going to make it easy on them.
No, they didn't take the oath back then. But they still hate the guy. Listen, when I was a kid, 12 or 13 years old, I forget, Ali got out of, which was Cassius Clay, didn't he change his name while he was in jail? He becomes a Muslim. Cassius Clay becomes Muhammad Ali. And I remember when he got out, I forget what fight it was. I was a little kid. I had my radio going, and I said, now this guy's going to get his block knocked off. But he won the fight. Ali won the fight, and I always wanted him to get his block knocked off. And there was the day he lost. Who did he lose to? I don't think it was Frazier. He lost to his sparring partner. No, it was not Buster Douglas. He lost to his sparring partner, man, and he was a good fighter.
Sphinx?
No, it was not Sphinx either.
It wasn't the area.
He lost to his sparring partner, but after it came, it was finally I got my victory, but it wasn't so sweet. I didn't hate him like when I was a little kid. It was like, what difference did it make? And it wasn't a big deal. But these people hate. Just literally hate. Verse 20, verses 4 and 5 of chapter 25. Back to verse 20, chapter 25. "But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. Those that are able." All right, so he has the same attitude as Gallio when things were brought up before him, is that there was, is it something that's worthy of death? Now he supposed that it could have been some crime against Rome. Listen, he's enforcing the crimes that are against Rome, not crimes that are committed against their religion. And so they bring up things that he supposed that he was assuming they were going to bring up, but they didn't bring up these things. So nothing worthy of death, and Paul's accusers need to come to Paul. All right? So if we go back to Acts 18, they bring up these charges. And then they beat them before Gallio, and it says in verse 17, he cared for none of those things. When Gallio, verse 12, was the deputy of Achaia, the Jews made insurrection with one accord against Paul, and brought him to the judgment seat, saying, this fellow persuadeth men to worship God contrary to the law. When Paul was now about to open his mouth, Gallio said unto the Jews, if it were a matter of wrong or wicked rudeness, O ye Jews, reason that I should bear with you. He would listen. But if it be a question of words and names, and of your law, look ye to it, for I will be no judge of such matters. I'm not going to judge this thing. You have to judge that amongst yourself. And so he does not become involved in it. Acts 24, 18 through 20. Whereupon certain Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with multitude nor with tumult, who ought to have been here before thee and object if they had aught against me. In other words, they didn't come up for that trial. Or else let these same here say, if they have found any evil doing in me, while I stood before the council. They couldn't even bring up their own charges that they could prove. They brought up plenty of charges, but they couldn't prove anything against Paul. And those that were the civil authorities were not interested. Are able. Again, we're on this ability thing. Those that are able. And this is where I had gotten my title for last week in preparing this, when I talked about being busy here and there. In 1 Samuel 30, why people are either able or unable. I mean, there's reasons why people could have gone or should have gone or could not go. If you go to 1 Samuel 30, I start thinking of biblical reasons or illustrations in the Bible why people can't go on. People cannot go on. Cannot go on. In 1 Samuel 30:10, verse 10, but David pursued, he could go on. He and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Bezor. They're so tired from fighting and so faint they cannot go on. They're not physically able to make it. 2 Samuel 19, when David is kicked out of Jerusalem, banned, he runs away from his son, and he's coming back. Barzillai, he is coming over with him. David encourages him to come with him back to Jerusalem. And Barzillai, the Gileadite, came down. This is 2 Samuel 19, verses 31 through 37, and went over Jordan with the king to conduct him over Jordan. He marched with him over Jordan back to Jerusalem. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, even 80 years old, and he had provided the king of sustenance while he lay at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. In other words, he had money, he had means. He helped David. He goes back to him as far as crossing of the Jordan Basin. Basically, he says, I'm too old. Some people just get too old. This is why fixing up the house starting 5 years ago, I redid Starla's room. We doubled the size of her room because it was divided into 2 rooms and so on. And we did all this because I know that I'm running out of steam. Physically, I get too faint and I'm going to be too old. I'm going to be too old for this. And so he says, I'm too old. Ruth, chapter 4, verse 6. Another reason not to go forward. This was in Boaz seeking the hand of Ruth. He sought the hand of Ruth. And so in Ruth is just before 1 Samuel there. In chapter 4, verse 6, and the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. This individual was first in line to redeem and to gain the hand of Ruth, but he said, I can't do it because I will harm my own inheritance. So he stuck to what the law said and said, lest I mar my own inheritance. He can't go forward because he had another obligation, and he's going to fulfill it. John chapter 8. I mean, we could come up with all kinds of reasons, legitimate ones, for not going forward. Not going forward. John chapter 8, verse 9. Here they want to stone this girl. This is the one, and now some theologians say, well, the first 11 verses don't belong there, which is just utter nonsense. They've studied themselves stupid. John chapter 8, verse 9. This is where Jesus, this is the only writing that he ever does. And it's in the dust, so then obviously it disappears. And he does it twice. Some they speculate as to what he writes. Some say he wrote the Ten Commandments out. And then he does it twice. Why would he write the commandments? Because he says, he who is without sin cast the first stone. Then he goes down and writes again. Why would he write the commandments twice? Because Moses did it twice. There's the Ten Commandments. Remember, he broke the stones. He break them in pieces. And then if you go to Deuteronomy is the second Gibeon law. It's written down twice. I mean, that's a good speculation as to why, if that's what he does, why he does it twice. That Moses does that twice. But look at verse 9, getting back to the point. If those who are able, and they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience. So some probably didn't go because their conscience was bothering them, knowing that they were wrong. They decided not to go. Could be another reason why people didn't go. Here's another good reason. This is the one that, and why I preached the message last week. 1 Kings 20, verse 40. It's where we were last week in our sermon. And as thy servant was busy, this is where Ahab was supposed to kill, he was supposed to kill Ben-Hadad. That was the ruler and the one he was fighting with. He didn't kill him, he let him go. And the prophet then predicts, it gives his prophecy that Ahab, since you let him go, it's going to be your life for his life. Because you let him go, you're going to die, Ahab. And he goes through this whole illustration. I don't feel led to go through the illustration. But thy servant was busy here and there. And I said, the word busy is only found one time in the Bible. What other busy is found in the Bible, by the way? Anybody know? Pardon, the word busy. Busy, but it's not a single word. Busybody, I think, is used twice. And give me the other one. It's the same word, plural. Busy bodies. So that's only found 3 times. Twice, busybody or busybodies, and one time busybody. And it's one word. And busy is only found one time in the Bible. So thy servant was busy here and there. Ahab the king spared Ben-Hadad. The sons of the prophets predict the fall of Ahab because he spared Ben-Hadad instead of killing him. Then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. And I had made the mention here, because when you and I read that story, usually we read over this because we know Ahab dies. And so what sticks in our head is thy life shall be for his life. And we just, at least I don't pay attention to the second part, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. If a person is saved, they don't pay with their life. They have eternal life. They pay by being busy doing other things. They pay by not earning rewards. And they end up paying the talent of silver. They forfeit their reward. So one is for the lost and one is for the saved. But the idea here is why they could not go down to Caesarea to lay charges against Paul is that they were busy here and there. They were just too busy to go. I mean, those are legitimate reasons for not being able to go down there. And I don't mean just, not because they were lazy. It wasn't, well, I'm just lazy. I'm giving legitimate, bona fide reasons that they can't make it. Listen, let's say you're supposed to go to work tomorrow. Well, some people are going to have a legitimate reason not to go. They might have a doctor's appointment. Right? They could get in an accident on the way. I mean, there's all kinds of legitimate reasons that a person, they could get sick. Legitimate reasons why they can't go. We're way over. We will pick this up on number 6, and that is the accusations. Yes, sir.
But we also, they didn't want to go down because they had nothing to say.
It could be because they had no proof. They had something to say. They had plenty to say, but as it says there, they couldn't prove Paul would say, but you have no proof of what this is. You have no proof. Okay, Father, bless now the preaching in Christ's name. Amen.